Welcome to All Things Financial with Jack Driscoll. Each week, Jack takes on all things you thought were hard to understand about your finances and makes it fun, easy, but most of all interesting. From insurance to the best way to save your money and squeeze the most out of the dollars you put aside for your rainy day. And now, you have a friend in the money business. Here's your host, Jack Driscoll.
Welcome back again, everyone, to another edition of All Things Financial. What I'm doing is an extended series on college planning, how to pay for college. And I'm in probably 7 or 8 parts already. So I have the series up on YouTube. If anybody wants that, you'll be able to email me or call our office. We can get you information on that. This show airs on the radio, WWNL. 1080 a.m. every Saturday morning from 8:30 to 9 a.m. And then it's also on WWNL.com streaming live at that time. And of course on the TV as you see me now. So what I'm doing in this series is to try to promote many alternative ways to pay for college, to soften the cost a little bit. We've talked about in the show scholarships, 529 plans, UTMAs, UGMAs, covered LIRAs. It's overwhelming. Grants and loans and all the financial aid, the FAFSA. We've touched on a lot of that in these shows. So you can get caught up if you want to see some of the other ones. But I continue to go through this series and want to communicate. Last week, I started with state either prepaid tuition plans or some of the state 529 plans. They call the U-Promise that we talked about last week, the SAGE tuition credit programs. And I mentioned last week a couple things also with the EE savings bonds being able to be redeemed under certain circumstances, tax-free if they're used for college. There are so many different, almost overwhelming alternative ways to try to maximize your dollars that's why I wanted to put out this series. Not too many that I know of cover this area of financial planning. So one of the components with college planning I mentioned last week is start early. And I mean starting even before you have children. So if you've got extra money because you're out of school, out of high school, out of college, not even married yet, start putting all your money aside. I mentioned to you a week or two ago, live on only part of what you make, save up money and things like that, which is common sense financial planning, even though most don't do it. With a good plan in place, you'll see why to do it and leverage your own assets and leverage your own self. So I'm going to dig into some nitty-gritty today, and I want to start with these state programs. Every state is different. Some states have programs, some states don't. The old programs, old meaning relatively older programs, were prepaid tuition, and they were understood to be, I can buy a credit now. So that might mean $350 a credit today at a so-and-so university. So if you paid a university on a prepaid tuition plan, $350, let's say, you could pre-buy future credits at locking in today's costs. That's how the original plan was communicated. That's how it was sold by the states. It's not really that way now. I'm not sure it was even really that way back then, but we're only concerned about now. When we see prepaid tuition plans or we hear of them, we're hearing of something that's on its way out or already has gone out and been replaced by these 529 plans. So let me explain. Prepaid tuition plan, we thought was what I just explained. We're finding today's prepaid tuition plans in the few states that still have it, Pennsylvania is not one of them, is you're not paying $350 or the current rate for one tuition credit anymore. So what's happening is these states that still allow it, typically, every state's different, but there aren't many that still even have it. They're saying, no, you prepay maybe you pay $500 for it or $400 for a tuition credit that today costs $350. So you're overpaying. And what you're hoping is the appreciation costs, the increases aren't as much when you look at this as to take you broke that made a different alternative work better, or are more than what you paid. So if you pay $450 for one tuition credit and your proposed student has 8 years to go to school, so they're still in junior high school, so you're pre-buying these credits, you're paying $450, they're currently only costing current enrollees $350. You're gambling, and so is the school, that by the time your student enters, costs would have exceeded $450 a credit. So now you were a genius because you paid only $450 a credit. If costs don't escalate that fast, and they only escalate the cost of a credit to what would be maybe $420, then you've lost money by pre-purchasing with these so-called prepaid tuition credits. So you're gambling on this. And it's rare that we're finding tuition prepaid plans being offered by states. And it's also a gamble on whether they're going to pay off anyway. But what are your alternatives? Well, let's run through these prepaid plans. I have an article here. I have a lot of resources. I share this with you. You can see what I brought in today. We won't cover all of it on the show, but I brought in one article here that was online that I want to touch on with you, and it was Reuters.com. That's Reuters.com. And it's called Prepaid College Plans, Shrinking Options, and Rising Risks. So this article goes to say many of these states discontinued their plans, as I just mentioned, and then they're going on in the article, and this is what I wanted to point out to you. There are risks with these plans, even if they're available. So you're looking at these plans, and it's saying many states, it says here, has significantly raised the amount consumers need to contribute to keep up with potential tuition hikes. Now, you thought, and I thought, when I hear prepaid tuition plans, I locked in the tuition with the amount of credits that I bought. This article goes on to say that's not necessarily the case. And it goes on to say the worst case scenario, some that haven't even happened yet, but the worst case potential scenarios, parents think, it goes on to say here, they have paid for future college costs and then are suddenly told the money isn't all there, or even that the plan has collapsed because of investment losses. Now, this article goes on to say that has not happened anywhere yet, but it could, because people need to read the fine print and understand what kind of guarantee their plan really offers, this article goes on to say. And the reason is, and I'm again quoting from this article, there's a history of difficulties. Ohio closed its prepaid plan to new investments. You looked at a family may have pre-purchased $40,000, they're giving as an example here, and the college tuition was $60,000. The family, if they really locked in costs, saved that extra $20,000. If that state's prepaid tuition plan did not guarantee the increases above those costs, the family still has to come up with the extra $20,000. So there were bargains, but they're going on to say, in Washington, the answer now to this question, is it going to be the taxpayers, the universities, or consumers that if tuitions keep rising, who's going to have to pay? And the article says in Washington, the answer right now is that consumers are going to have to pay. When the state legislature in Washington agreed to temporarily lift a 7.5% tuition cap, which was the cap they were allowing tuitions to increase, tuition immediately soared 19%, this article says. So the plan had no choice but to increase pricing for a year of tuition to $16,000 roughly from $11,000. That's huge. These are major changes. And again, the point of this article is very little is locked in. So it goes on to say another issue is often families are under the impression, as I mentioned before, that they're locking in current tuition prices, which now is rarely the case. It used to be better. Everyone assumes they're getting it at tuition prices. They quoted Joe Hurley, which is a founder of savingforcollege.com. So there's a resource you can go to and get more information if you'd like. It goes on to say, Hurley says, for example, in Washington State, today a parent would be locking in a tuition at $16,300, while the current University of Washington rate is $10,346 a year. So you're paying more than it costs, and then hoping the cost of inflation and escalation rises higher than what you overpaid. Do you see what I mean? Over that time period. So this is a real issue. When you look at these prepaid tuition plans, you have to step back now. You have to step back and evaluate these. The next point this article goes on to say, don't assume it's guaranteed. Now that's a great point, because when we think tuition prepaid plans or even state 529 plans, we do kind of see words in some of their language like guaranteed. And this article goes on to clarify some of that. Number one, it says fees aren't the only problem. So fees are a problem. You have to look at the fees in some of these plans and see if they're eroding potential gains or growth on your money. But then it says even prepaid plans that use guaranteed in their names, such as Pennsylvania's 529 Guaranteed Savings Plan, are not always backed by the state, meaning if the investments go sour, this article goes on to say, investors could potentially lose everything. Now, that's scary. Here we're thinking state plans, Pennsylvania named here, 529 Guaranteed Savings Plan, and this article is saying, wait a minute, maybe those funds are not actually guaranteed. It says here, so far that hasn't happened since most plans invest conservatively, but it is a possibility, particularly for families like the Durkins, this article is quoting here, and it goes on to say over a period of time. So they're quoting Len Weiser Varon, a partner at Mintz, Levin, Cohn, Ferris, Glovsky, and Popeo, LLP, who advises the Massachusetts Educational Financing Authority. Now listen, I have to stop right here. Many shows I say the same thing. Does this sound complicated, folks? It is. Don't try to do this yourself. Don't try to do any component of financial planning because you read an article and it told you here's what you should do. You need to get to qualified, competent professionals, not in only one area. So I'm looking at, am I best if you go with a specific insurance professional that handles one area, or a specific college specialist, or a specific retirement specialist, or a specific annuity specialist? In my opinion, you have to get comprehensive planners because we need to balance needs in your financial lives. There's only so much money to go around. Many of these articles I come across say, don't do college planning if you're falling short on your retirement planning. Don't do retirement planning if you're falling short on your family protection. So that if something on your retirement planning, you put all your eggs into that basket or all your efforts into preparing for that, and then you die or become disabled. There goes the goose that laid the golden eggs. There are no more income contributions to the 401k, to Social Security, to savings plans. So we need family protection plans. Folks, financial planning is very complex, highly complicated, sophisticated, even in these single niches, like I'm talking to you about college planning. A single slice of financial planning can be so complex when we peel the layer off and look inside. So I'll go on with this article because I'm sharing. The reason I bring the show out is to share with all of you. It's not necessarily to teach you how to do it. It's to teach you that there's so much to do in getting it right that you're likely to miss it. So a lot of these opportunities for not even know they exist. So let's talk further about these plans and go on here. It goes on to say Massachusetts, Florida, Mississippi, and Washington are the only 4 states at the time of this article that guarantee their plans through full faith and credit of the state. The Texas plan is actually guaranteed by the state universities and colleges, which is different. Then it goes on, again it comes back to Pennsylvania, and it says, the plans run by Pennsylvania, Nevada, and Michigan are backed, quote unquote, only by the assets of the trust. So that's important. And then the article goes on to say, if those assets are depleted due to risky investing or unprecedented market event, investors may be out of luck. Levin said, that's Levin, who they're quoting here. Then there are those plans are in our surrounding states, Maryland, Virginia, Illinois, which require legislative action for the state to pay back investors in the event of a funding shortfall. Experts, this article is saying, say that doesn't necessarily mean funds are guaranteed, because in states like Illinois and Maryland, lawmakers are only allowed to consider passing a law but not required to pass such a law. So that goes on. It's a moral obligation. So we consider those as backed by a moral obligation. Well, a moral obligation, that's hard to evaluate. Now it goes to Virginia, and it says Virginia's plan comes closer to providing a full guarantee in that state law, provides a financial guarantee in each year budget to cover its plan in the event of a shortfall. And it can be changed by the General Assembly. And even that's subject to a veto by the governor, the article says. So there's a lot to this. Why do I talk about different states? Because you can deal with different states on many of these plans, the prepaid tuition plans and the 529 plans through the state. And I touched on that last week, as you'll recall. Many of these plans, one of the biggest questions we get, do I have to invest in a prepaid tuition plan in this state and then a prepaid tuition plan in another state? What if we don't know for my 9th grader whether we'll be in Ohio or Virginia or Massachusetts or Pennsylvania or a state school or a private? Most of these plans, not all, most of these plans, so you have to check, do apply credits to other states, and some don't very well apply the credits. But it matters, because now if that's the case, now I'm shopping state plans maybe by which one's guaranteed better than the other if they transfer state to state or across state lines as easily. So there's a lot of research to be done here if we're going this route. Some people choose not to go this route at all. They say, you know what, I'm going to invest my money or I'm going to save my money. I'm either an investor or I'm a saver. And we're going to do that outside. We're going to run our own money. We're going to try to grow it as well as we can grow it. And I don't need tax benefits, which is why we're using these plans. And I don't need locked-in credits, which is why we're using these plans. So some people opt out and don't choose these at all. But here we go next. It says Illinois is not the only prepaid savings plan to run into trouble. So now they're talking about some that did run into trouble, and there were shortfalls. Now I won't go into all of that. But it goes on in the article to say few parents realize that the management of some plans are allowed to invest a big portion of the assets in higher risk assets, such as hedge funds, and private equity vehicles. Some of them are saying they're as high as 45 and 47% in alternative investments. And they're locked in sometimes, alternative investments. So I go through these articles. The reason I bring these resources out on TV and radio is I spend all my days doing this. So it's an opportunity for me to share things I'm running across. You could run into these, across these yourself too, I know that. But by me doing a lot of work for you, It allows you to be able to golf and spend time with your grandkids and be out doing other things, tune into the show and get caught up on a capsule or a summary or a consolidation of a lot of information I come across all week long as I'm working for other clients that I can compile and share with you. So it's like a good capsule of information in all areas of financial planning. That's why I bring the show out. As I run across things, I'm trying to expand that information out there to consumers. So we get into a lot of these areas. Now, I do want to touch on two other areas as I wrap up this show, and we'll go into them in a little more detail in the next show. But we'll talk some more about these prepaid plans. I do want to talk more about Pennsylvania, especially since we're in the state of Pennsylvania, their 529 plan, because as we saw in this article, their 529 guaranteed plan, even though it uses the word guaranteed, is not technically guaranteed by the state, this article goes on to say. So you're going to want to check if you're interested in a Pennsylvania 529 plan. Contact them and ask questions, probe this further. Are these funds guaranteed by the state? Is this article wrong? Or are these funds not guaranteed by the state? And then if not, so why do you use the word guaranteed? Before we invest in your program, we want the answer to that. And you may find the answer be, well, we guarantee the interest rate, but we don't guarantee the funds. And that you'd say, well, that's not satisfactory. When I see guaranteed, we expect our funds are guaranteed. So it would be good that you listened to the show or watched this show and found that out in advance before you made a mistake if you were thinking of going into that plan, assuming those funds are guaranteed if anything goes wrong. All right, the other thing we will talk about, again, we'll go into next week, is the EE bonds, the UTMA. We talked about that last week, those uniform transfer to minors accounts. I want to touch on a little bit of the tax implications on that and a little more on these 529 plans in the state of Pennsylvania. There's a lot more we have to go through. We have to go through scholarships. We have to go through student loans. We have to go through a lot more in the show, but in the series before I wrap it up. But I appreciate your tuning in, and I'll be back again next week.
Securities and investment advisory services offered through SagePoint Financial Inc., member FINRA SIPC, and registered investment advisor. Insurance services offered through Driscoll Insurance and Financial Services Inc., which is not affiliated with SagePoint Financial Inc.